Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. We're gonna get the rest of the crew on here in 1 second, okay? All right, so the invites have been sent out, and Brett and hey, look at it, it worked like first time. Yes.
Yeah. Go. Uh,
How's everybody doing?
Wonderful.
Good to see you, Mr. Jones.
Good to see you, sir. What's new and exciting? Everybody here's
We actually have some sunshine here in New Jersey.
well, we wouldn't want to spoil you all.
Yeah, it's 70 and sunny here. We're gonna take it, man.
Agreed.
Meanwhile, we got 3 inches of snow last week.
It's about par for the course, man. Par for the course.
Same here. It's been it's been interesting, but I feel like spring is around the corner, and we're headed the right direction. So we'll see.
That sounds good. So guys, normally it's just Eric and I, talking a bunch of random stuff. But today we actually have to, we brought a pro on because we're pretty incompetent at this point. So we figured we'd grab some of that a little bit more than we do. So today we've got our good friend Brett Jones. Brett knows a few things about kettlebells. He's learned mostly from the internet, but he does have a little experience. So Brett, thank you for coming on. We appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us today. And we're going to have a lot of information. There's probably going to be a little bit of busting chops because we all at some point worked together, and we've that's kind of how we all met through the FMS world, and we'll go from there. So today, the MC is going to be Eric. Eric's going to be leading the show, and he's going to be asking a bunch of questions about kettlebell training, and I'm going to let Brett answer most of them, and I'm just going to nod and then go from there. We should be good to go.
There you go.
If you do have specific questions, put them in the comments. We will try our best to get to them, and if we don't, we'll just blame it on Brett.
I have been taking the blame for many things, so I am comfortable with that setup, and look forward to the conversation, guys.
Awesome.
As we were once told in a review of one of our courses together, Brett and I were told that we were too tangential, right? If I remember that one. So yeah. But that being said, I will kind of take the host role, being that I try to always know my station in life, and I know in this little virtual room that I'm here that most of the stuff I learned about kettlebells I stole from these two guys. So I'm gonna ask more questions than I am gonna answer today. So the first question is, and when we open up our course, our Principles of Program Design course, we talk about kind of where we come from and having our own little silos, and being aware of other different methods that are out there, and talking about the difference between principles and methods. And one of the things that we bring up, and even in some of our beta courses brought up, as far as kettlebells, and we say, okay, well, what do people think about the kettlebell guy or the kettlebell girl in the room? And it's always, well, all they do is kettlebells. Like, it's the same 3 lifts. That's all they do. And so, do you use anything other than kettlebells, or is that your sole mode of exercise?
For me personally, especially right now, kettlebells are my primary training tool. I do a little bit of body weight, primarily some pull-ups of different varieties and some one-arm push-ups. But basically, yeah, I'm a kettlebell-focused person. I've certainly spent my time with the barbell and the power lifts, squat, bench, and dead, and spent a little time powerlifting. But I've been doing kettlebells for now just over 20 years, and I've kind of always come back to them. I actually never pursued learning the Olympic lifts because I could already swing, snatch, clean, and do those things with a kettlebell. And I was like, well, why spend the time learning how to do that? I can just do this. And I'm not saying that was the best decision in the world, or, I certainly could have made a different decision, but yeah, I've been a kettlebell focused person for many, many years, and have certainly seems to have done pretty well for me.
Mike, is that all you ever use with all your clients? You just have a couple of kettlebells and that's the whole gym?
It's just kettlebells and foam rollers nonstop. No, so for my clients, to be honest, I would say the majority of my clients do not use kettlebells, and it's dependent on the scenario. My training in general, well, we'll start with that. My training in general, I'm doing a lot of jujitsu right now. So my training is usually Advil. And that's pretty just chucking Advil down, trying to stay moving. But, and to be honest with you though, I'm starting to incorporate a lot more kettlebell training. And here's why. I always feel better when I'm training with kettlebells. And that's not, something that I'm just saying because I'm a big fan of it. But every time something tweaks or something's bothering me, I start training with bells and I feel better. So it's always what I should do is just do that all the time, but I'm stubborn and a little bit of a moron. So I keep on doing a bunch of things that jack me up a little bit. But yeah, so I primarily train with bells, body weight. And obviously when I'm doing a lot of jujitsu, I'm not doing a ton of that. But with my clients, my personal training clients, depending on, what they're doing, we're going to do the basics with bells. With my fighters, a little bit of the basics as well, but it's just different scenarios. My personal training clients are mostly coming out of rehab. So it really has to do with what they need. Sometimes there's a bell, sometimes there isn't. And then with my fighters, some of them use it, some of them don't. It just depends if we have enough time to teach them to do it correctly, so we get the positive adaptation that we're looking for. So that's how I use them.
Cool. So here's the biggest question of the day. If you can clear this up, it's pronounced kettlebell, right? Kettlebell.
I'm sorry. It's Kettlebell.
Oh, kettlebell. Thank you. That's what I thought it was. Yes.
That's kind of a funny thing because memes will go around the internet with the Samuel L. Jackson character. Say kettlebell one more time, and I don't care. Pavel has a joke in one of his early books. He's like, call it Bob. Like I don't care.
Yeah.
Use it. But kettlebell, cattleball. It's a cannonball with a handle on it. Has tremendous utility, so I'm happy, whatever you want to call it, as long as you use
it. Yeah, and a bunch of our posts this week, kind of incorporating kettlebells, is kind of highlight some of the things that really that offset center of mass serves itself well to, whether it's this pendulum type of effect or whether it's using it in a bottoms up position or any of these types of things. And so, if you haven't seen any of those, definitely go back. But I think in addition to the elegance of the movements that are most associated with the kettlebell, which we'll get to a little bit later, is what's always drawn me to it is that when you dig a little deeper, and being that we do a course called Principles of Programming and Program Design, is that I think some of the principles that I've learned via you guys and Pavel and reading that up on stuff is the principles of things like breathing behind the shield and silent stomp and grabbing the ground, and like those types of elements that you guys elegantly put into via the kettlebell lifts really can be applied to anything, right? I can apply those principles to a cable machine or a dumbbell or a barbell, but how you guys kind of go about that, and if you want to kind of speak to that, like how those principles are really what the true beauty of the kettlebell training, especially some of the strong first stuff and what you guys have done with Pop.
Absolutely. The breathing techniques, the high tension techniques, building better software, right? So strength is a skill. And so we work on this concept of strength being a skill. We know we want this consistent practice in. We want to build those good patterns and pathways, and that facilitates greater strength over time. And so, yeah, we have these consistent things, and the breathing one is an interesting to kind of focus on, because we do something at our certs, the handshake drill, where we layer in different tension techniques, and we make you stronger right now because we upgrade your software just that little bit that gives you the ability to produce more tension, and tension is strength, and quickly applied tension is power. And so if we give you that ability to upgrade your software just a little bit and make you stronger right now, that's something we can take advantage of across the spectrum. So it does apply in a lot of different areas, and it is that strength is a skill and a better software, better patterning that really kicks over into multiple areas.
It's funny. I just literally had that conversation. I have a young athlete that I just worked with prior to this, and his dad brought him to me because he's getting ready to go into his high school weight room, and I know what he's going to get thrown into because I'm in high school weight rooms every day, and getting him prepared so he's going to survive the bench squat deadlift that he's going to get thrown into, and getting him to understand, and at this stage when it's critical, that exactly that these things are skills, and I need you to practice these things at home, not to train. That's different. Strength training versus training the skill of strength is a completely different thing. And I kind of love that, and love it so much. You should probably, I mean, if somebody could name a facility after that, that would be really cool.
Yeah. Just saying, I heard originally started as a blog, and then, but whatever. I mean, it wasn't very good to begin with. But we'll see if anybody out there is willing to make that step. I actually want to piggyback on something that Brett said earlier, about sort of the principles of what we do with Strong First, and talks about the handshake drill. But we actually have, and I got to find this, an old video of Brett doing sort of several techniques with a grip dynamometer. And Brett, correct me if I get this wrong, because there's a good chance I'm going to get it wrong. So we had Brett use a grip dynamometer, and he just used grip. He didn't really incorporate power breathing or bracing his abdominals, and we got a readout. And then the next, we let him rest, of course. And then the next set, I believe we incorporated a little bit more sort of power breathing. And then again, it bumped up a little bit again. And then he incorporated power breathing, grip, and a lot of abdominal tension, and utilizing that radiation. And every single time he sort of added one component of that, we get a better readout. So when he talks about getting stronger immediately, that's exactly what he's talking about. It's sort of, hey, when we add these various components to these lifts, you're going to get automatic feedback. And it was pretty cool to see when we actually did it with that grip dynamometer that day.
Yeah, it was, we like to talk within the Strong First circles about our GLAG, G-L-A-G, glutes, lats, abs, grip. And so when you layer in some of these things, and you know how to produce the intra-abdominal pressure, because you have baroreceptors in your abdominal cavity, and when you properly fire off those baroreceptors, it's like turning up the amplifier to your neurological system, and it does give you the ability to be stronger right now. And so, building that into different areas, we take advantage of it in something like the swing, where we sync our breath with that loaded eccentric position, having that quick inhale, good intra-abdominal pressure to handle that eccentric load that occurs, which is it is one of the magical things about kettlebell training, and most effective things about kettlebell training. And then being able to turn around and redirect that force into the next powerful swing. So it works with the military press, what we would consider a grind or a slow strength activity. And it works with something like the swing or snatch, which we would consider a ballistic or a power lift.
So one of the other things that I've always loved, and it really seems to be a big tenet of a lot of Pavel's books, and one of the principles that I've learned from you guys is this concept of minimalism. And so we talk about, our courses on program design, and saying one of the biggest things that we do if we go in and audit someone's program, or if we're doing live case studies, is to cut way more out than we add in. And the concept of the minimalism, whether it's the naked warrior of just a single leg pistol squat and a single arm push up, or going ahead to just a kettlebell swing and on a push up combination, or a kettlebell swing and a get up, like the ability to kind of just marry these things that check a whole lot of boxes with two simple movements. Is something that really gets people to rethink. There's probably a lot of stuff I put in my program that's either not necessary or may counteract some of the other things that I have there.
100%. And for myself, I am that kind of minimalist mindset, where if I can do one thing and get 5, I don't go searching for the other 4. And we've talked about it a long time in the community as the what the heck effect, where I do swings and get-ups for a while, and I set a pull-up PR, even though I haven't been training pull-ups. And so it really is an interesting thing that as we upgrade the software and we work on strength as a skill, and we build the ability to control your body better, know how to apply these tension techniques, we see wide-ranging, applications and transfer to a lot of different activities. So that, and again, I think a lot of that actually does come from the combination of that loaded eccentric, which is unique to being able to swing the kettlebell between the legs the way that we do, and achieve that loaded eccentric hinge position. But then also, like I said, some of those principles and concepts that we talk about from a high tension standpoint, and understanding how to control and use your body better. For my own training, like I have anybody that follows me on Instagram knows I do a pretty small menu of things. So I do the same thing, but I don't do the same thing all the time. So I clean, I press, I squat, snatch, swing, get up. It seems to be taking me, a really far, really far. So inch wide, mile deep.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I think is super appealing to that sort of minimalistic idea of training is you can get a lot done, and it's minimal from obviously from the amount of exercises that you're doing, but also tell you what, if you don't have a ton of time, do a handful of get-ups on each side and do some swings and push-ups on the minute for 20 minutes. You got a pretty good workout right there that checks boxes, and you're in and out in a half hour. So the beauty of kettlebell training, when you actually learn how to utilize those concepts and dial in your technique, you can get a lot done really, really quickly. And I know for me, I'm really busy. I'm always running around. I get 2 kids. Like the other day, I just did 100 snatches. That was my workout. And it was quick and dirty, did some joint mobility, did 100 snatches. I just did it timeless. I didn't time myself. I'm like, I'm just going to do 100. And it felt awesome. I felt great. I got recharged. And, I was kind of, and it also sets you up for another training session because you're not destroying yourself. You're not doing a 10 by 10, back squat program where you need 4 days off because you're just so destroyed. So not only are you able to squeeze in workouts, you can get multiple workouts within the week because you're not destroying yourself with an excessive amount of volume or load.
Absolutely. We want to look at training like investing in a bank. Who wants to put a lot of money in the bank and then only get a couple dollars out? Like nobody's going to sign up for that, right? I want to put a couple dollars in and get a lot of money out. And that's training in a nutshell. Help, I'm in a nutshell.
That.
You knew that was coming. But that's, we want to put a little in, get a lot out. And, I think one of the frustrating things for me, and I was asked this on a podcast a few years ago, people were like, well, what's your favorite recovery strategy? And I think that's interesting that we have this whole, and I've said this many times, so people are probably bored of hearing it, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's still here. People were like, well, how do I recover from my training? I'm like, if you're trying to always figure out how to recover from your training, you're doing too much. Or your lifestyle and your nutrition and everything else isn't supporting the level of training that you're trying to accomplish. Start by doing less. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, right? Just do less.
More, but do less.
So I think that's when you do hack away, and anytime you can use a Bruce Lee quote, use a Bruce Lee quote. But hack away the extra until you come to the essential. And I'm paraphrasing because I'm just I'm that guy. But yeah, so okay, there you go. Little stream of consciousness there.
Well, when I can tell you personally, when we were shut down with COVID, and we didn't have access to the gym, I got to dive in and experience it firsthand. And it was either doing quick in the dead of swings and push-ups, or it was simple and sinister, or swings and get-ups. To this day, still will incorporate that at least once a week as a thing, and it doesn't take away from any of my other lifts. And what was the remarkable thing is coming back off of months of not touching a barbell. When I came back, I hadn't really lost anything. It was able to maintain that strength and without the beating up of my joints and so forth. So being able to see that firsthand was kind of cool, that all I had was this 36 kilo bell, and just leveraging that and body weight was able to maintain strength and in a lot of those barbell lifts that we have that fear of, oh my gosh, if I stop benching. If I stop squatting, I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to lose all my strength in that. And that wasn't the case. And so if we go and look at now some of the specifics, some of those specific, key lifts, and looking at the get up has always been one of the ones that it's just got so much to unpack in there. Right. And we could spend days on just doing just that one move from the floor to standing, and how many different ways you can apply that. And where it's come from there, where it's become this bastardized sit-up that people do. One of the cool things I find is how that can be used. And this is, it's going to sound strange because we always talk about when we teach FMS, don't the people that say, oh, I just use my warm-up as an assessment. Well, no, you can't do that, because in Charlie Wangeroff talked about how first of all, your warm-up's biased to your own confirmation biases, number one. And then number two is you're going to miss something. But that being said, is if I know someone's movement background and now I watch them do a get up, we can learn a ton of stuff from there and see if there's something is off the norm. So if you can talk about how the get up itself becomes its own readiness screen, almost, so to speak.
Well, I'll give you an example of somebody who you wouldn't think would be doing get-ups. And I had a client years ago who had a variety of knee injuries and surgeries as a child. Quite frankly, it was the early days of orthopedic surgery on knees, and he ended up with about 15 to 30 degrees of knee flexion on either side. That was it. So obviously we weren't getting into half kneeling. We weren't doing the full get up, but putting him down in that get up and looking at his ability to get to the hand, get to the elbow, get to the hand, what we would call the tall sit position. If we did that on a certain day and he could do, 2 to 3 reps in a row smoothly on the right, but he couldn't do the second rep on the left, we knew we needed to have a little bit extra in his movement prep to get that right-left difference out of the way before we went to do anything else. And to your point, this was somebody that I knew there were certain things and pieces of the screen and things that I couldn't access just because of the movement limitations at the knee. Yet I could use the first 2 steps as a get up as a preparedness check for him on a given day, and make sure that we got right and left doing the same thing, and then move on to the rest of his training. So I use the analogy that the get up is the Swiss Army knife. You can usually pull out a tool with a Swiss Army knife to fit the situation that you're in. And I think the get up really does function in that way.
Yeah. So I'm going to sort of add on to that. So when it comes to sort of talking about readiness and using the get-ups, one of the things that I've noticed, and I'll be brutally honest, I haven't been doing as many get-ups as I probably should be doing, because when I do them, I actually feel really good. So that's why I don't do them. It makes perfect sense. But one thing that I noticed is when I was doing them consistently, when I would grab that sort of medium-ish bell for me, was usually right around a 28 or a 32. When I was doing get-ups consistently, I would find that, okay, man, some days that 28 or that 32 felt light. Some days it felt heavy. And that right away was some really simple feedback. That's for me, it was a readiness type of screen. I didn't need to, get out my phone and check my HRV in all my sleep, and that's not bad information, but I knew, man, that felt heavy today. I'm probably going to have to spend a little bit more time, in my warm up, or maybe that's not the best day to dial it in. So what it did for me, it provided a baseline. It provided a nice baseline. If I consistently, started with those 2 bells, I can tell immediately after rep 1 or, rep 1 and 1, because you're doing both sides, that if I needed a little bit more work or if I was good to go. So that's how I used it. And a lot of my clients do that as well, because I would say most of my clients that train with bells, they're starting their workout with get-ups or variations of get-up.
Absolutely. If I'm doing a particular session for a day, and let's say my working weight is going to be the 36 kilo or 32 kilo or whatever it is, or I'm doing a weight ladder and the 40 kilos involved, I will have done a get up with all of those weights because I do look at it as a great way to say, okay, yep, that felt great within the get up. So I feel confident moving into the rest of my routine. So there's days where I do 1 get up on each side. There's days where I do 4 to 5 get ups on each side. So I just vary it depending on what I'm doing for that day. And I just let the get up kind of be that, that final check of my readiness and just feeling like I'm ready to go.
Another cool thing that I've taken away from what I've learned from you guys is so much of training we talk about maxims. How much can you lift? How fast can you run? How far can you jump? All those things. Where we don't talk enough about minimums and boxes of check. Like going back to the get up, like that's where I kind of learned to say before you're going to go hold a kettlebell, you got to balance that shoe on your hand and do that 10 times perfect on each side before we were going to let you even think about holding a kettlebell. And so having those minimums set, I think is a really kind of elegant thing to say that you're gonna have to pass basic math before you go to algebra, and you got to pass algebra before you go to calculus. And in setting those minimums is something we don't think enough about in training.
Absolutely, and the shoe get up is something that's interesting since you brought that up. It's actually so. Gray has referred to the get up as alignment with integrity under load. And we know that we hit these set positions. We get to the elbow, we have this set position. We get to the hand, we have this set position. Well, the transition between those positions is one of the critical aspects. And so if I'm teaching someone to get up, and there's 7 different steps on the way up, or 6 or 7 steps on the way up, 6 or 7 steps on the way back. When you show somebody a get up the first time, pretty consistently, they're going to say, I'm never going to remember all that. That's way too complicated. Well, you get them down, you get them through it. And then we use the shoe to say, do you have smooth transitions? Are you controlling the transition from elbow to hand, from hand to sweeping the leg? Cobra Kai, sweep the leg. Yeah, Johnny. Sorry, once you hit play, it just has to happen. And so the shoe is just kind of that check. Do you know all the steps? Do you have smooth transitions? And it can be pretty revealing. You'll get some people they'll blaze through on one side and then they'll try the other side and they drop the shoe 5 times. They're just showing that they don't have quite as much control on that side, and smoothing that out makes moving to the weighted get-ups just that much safer. But once you've done that and you've gotten to the weighted get-ups, you might never revisit the shoe get up, but it is a useful teaching tool as you're getting started there.
Yeah, and one thing I'll sort of add to this, it slows people down because so many people want to, especially on the roll to elbow, get up to the post position or the tall sit, they usually want to bomb right there. They want to do this sort of explosive sit up and they go right there. And the feedback with the shoe is the shoe falls, right? So for a lot of people that want to just get it done, it slows them down, which is a beautiful thing. And like Brett said, it focuses on the lower body transition more than anything else. The one thing that the shoe get up does not have is the compression of the glenohumeral joint, right? So that's sort of the last thing that you add in. But here's the most important thing. You're not going to add a weight if you don't know what the heck's going on with your lower body, because it's just not going to go well. So nail down the ability to go through those transitions and then add a nice external load and start light and keep practicing. And before you know it, you're going to smooth out those transitions even more, but you're going to get some feedback once we get that kettlebell in your hand as well.
Okay, so last thing I want to shift gears and sneak in one more. Obviously the big one that most associated with the kettlebell is the swing, and so with that, there's multiple types. There's different styles of swing. So if you can kind of figure that out and kind of explain what that means, the difference between different styles, and it seems to me that the one that the American swing, as they call it, going way up overhead, seems to be the worst of them. Like the Bulgarians got cool split squats, the Romanians got really cool deadlifts. Like, how did we get screwed with the worst exercise of all of them? So explain how we got shafted in that deal, and what some of the different styles are.
Well, the swing became part of a competition, for lack of any better term. And in order to have consistently countable reps that could be, quote, judged, and I'm not saying the judging within these competitions is the highest level, but there's judging. There is a specific, you have to be able to count the rep. So in order to have a consistent, countable rep across many different individuals, they established that going overhead and actually kind of getting the bicep behind the ear kind of was their countable rep. So that's where it came from. It was simply to establish some sort of consistently judged and counted rep. Pavel has the overhead swing in his original RKC book. If you own, and this is a big if with the majority of the US population, if you own, and to throw it into the FMS world, you've got the trunk stability, you have the shoulder mobility and overhead position. If you have the ability to go overhead in that narrow grip position and establish, cool, that's great. Very few people own the ability to do that. So what you see is this dump of the pelvis, arch of the low back, drop of the head, and just kind of this really not good looking swing at all. But because I could see your ears and the bicep went behind your ear, boom, we count that rep. And I can show you some pictures from military training of push-ups that we would never count, but that rep counted. So that's where it came from. For me personally, full range of motion, and I'll run into this argument with some people, full range of motion, the swing is at the hips. If I hinge, and we'll talk more about that here in a minute, but if I hinge and I stand up into that standing plank, fully extending my hips, that's full range of motion. Where the bell goes is a side effect. I'm focused on how I coordinate my body and having this output of the swing, but really solid movement that supports that. So if you can go overhead with great form, cool. Overhead swings are fine. I'm not going to put a nationality on them. I've actually, I strive to remove sort of ethnic and national tags from exercises. But and what I want out of the swing is a good athletic hinge. And I've got articles on this on strongfirst.com, and you can look at them. But we get into this kind of vertical leap sort of position, shoulder above hip, hip above knee, little bit of shin angle, but a really powerful position. You would look at that position and say, that's an athlete getting ready to do something, versus the more stiff-legged variety. And when you restrict the shins to vertical, you focus on how you're tilting through the torso. That's a different swing. That's a more RDL or stiff-legged style swing. There is a reason to choose that from time to time. It does target the hamstrings more. If we have somebody that's coming back in an ACL prevention program or an ACL program, a more stiff-legged swing may have some play, because now I'm going to bias the hamstrings a little bit and get a little more activation and benefit there. But I'm going to bring somebody back into that more athletic hinge. What I don't do is squat people in their swings. And so for me, if the dominant movement of the hips is back, you're hinging. If the dominant movement of your hips is down, you're squatting. So as long as the dominant movement of my hips is not straight down, I'm not squatting. So people will look at the athletic hinge and go, oh, look at that squatty swing. That ain't a squatty swing. That's a good, powerful athletic hinge.
Yeah, and I think from a biomechanical standpoint too is a lot of people think you have to have that high hip position, like Brett said, which is more kind of low back hammies, but and I think it's about 15, 20 degrees of knee flexion is kind of the ideal knee angle to get the glutes to sort of kick in. And that's going to be something that I think a lot of people aren't used to. Like, I bend my knees that much. I'm like, yeah, you bend your knees that much, because I think people assume it's this stiff-legged thing, and it is. It doesn't have any knee flexion, but in order to really get as powerful as possible, if you want to load those glutes, you got to have that 15, 20 degrees of knee flexion as you go into that posterior weight shift and into that hinge. So for a lot of people, I'll say, I need you to make your swing a little bit more squatty. And for some others, I need you to make your swing a little bit more hingy. So again, the problem is someone will hear this and go, Mike said everyone should make their swings more squatty. It's like, no, it's based off the individual. So we have these sort of general cues that we use, but from a specificity standpoint, some people need more squatty swings. Some people need more hingy swings. So that's just called coaching. Funny how that works, huh?
and adapted to the individual. I can't tell you how many times I've been teaching a workshop or a cert, and I'll give an individual a cue, and then somebody else comes up later and says, well, that cue really messed me up. And I'm like, it wasn't meant for you. Like, it was for the person, two people down. You don't do that. That's not the right cue for you.
Well, the theme that I love for performance with my athletes is teaching them that horizontal projection of force, right? And I explain to them, unless you're jumping up, which even in basketball is most associated with vertical jumping, for every time you jump, you're probably producing force horizontally and running up and down the court, 10 times more. And so most things athletically, we're moving front to back much more than we're moving up and down. And so being able to produce that horizontal force is much more conducive and have probably more carryover. And they've even looked at that in research and looking at the difference between the effects on sprinting with, doing hip hinging versus squatting. And seeing how that projection of horizontal force is going to have much more transfer. But last thing, shifting gears before we wrap up, is also going completely opposite. Is we've talked a lot about strength and performance, but I think there's a lot of things within the kettlebell that we can use in either those early phases of training or even coming back in terms of rehab, of things like the arm bar and learning joint centration and alignment because of that offset center of gravity, learning how alignment through the hand, wrist, elbow to the shoulder in a bottoms up position, that this also serves itself really well to not just meatheads like us, but it serves itself really well into even some really low level situations to create some incredible awareness.
100%. And I think that is where this weight that becomes more alive in your hands, the thick handle, which is going to get more grip. If I get more grip, I get more activation up the chain, and the way the rotator cuff and the hand and wrist work together. When I start learning how to manipulate this center of mass, and I was talking to my dad here a couple weeks ago, and I worked in the family business, and the family business was on summers and stuff like that. I'd work in the family business, a chemical company. So I'd be rolling around 55-gallon drums that weighed, 450 to 700 pounds. And I'm a little, 140 pounds sopping wet, little scrawny guy, but I got to figure out how to manipulate 450 to 500, 700 pounds. So the offset center of mass of the bell and the way you start learning how to control that does have tremendous carryover in a variety of settings, from rehab to high level strength.
I'm just going to say I agree.
There you go.
You concur. I concur. So with that, first of all, I want to thank Brett for being our first Instagram Live guest. Couldn't think of a better person to do it. He's a friend. We absolutely love him and couldn't appreciate your time more for doing this. So before we sign off here and do our little plugs, Brett, anything you want to talk about that's new and exciting you're working on, or people can go find out more about the intricacies and elegance of Mr. Brett Jones?
Well, I mean, obviously, you can follow me on Instagram here at Brett Jones SFG. I do have a website, appliedstrength.com. I have a bunch of articles on strongfirst.com. Not as many, but a few articles on functionalmovement.com. And I am in the process of finishing a book on this iron cardio or strength aerobics protocol that I've been using a lot. And do you remember the old movie Money Pit with Tom Hanks? The contractor would always tell him it's 2 weeks. Everything's going to be ready in 2 weeks. Yeah, the book's going to be ready in two weeks. So that's me in a nutshell.
We're going to hold you to that.
Yeah. Once again, Brett's pretty humble guy, but I'm telling you, this strength aerobics, is it going to be an ebook, Brett? Is that the okay, guys? You're not going to want to miss this. This is phenomenal stuff, and the cool thing is seeing Brett do the work. Like, he's not just like, oh, this sounds like a good idea. He's like, you see his workout. He's doing this stuff, and he's taking the information from those workouts and the feedback and the results, and he's making these changes. So you guys are going to get a pretty amazing experience once that is done. And Brett, I've known Brett for a long time. Brett's actually coming up to Skill Strength next weekend. He's going to be donating his time graciously to come up, and we're going to do this colon cancer awareness fundraiser, and we've got a bunch of attendees, and I'm really excited to learn from him, and we're going to have probably a little bit of fun when he's up here as well. So looking forward to seeing Brett next week. And for those of you that are attending that don't know Brett, here he is. For the most part, he's a pretty good guy, and we'll go from there. So this was fun. We should do this again, maybe in person. Who knows?
I'm available anytime. Well, I'm not available anytime you guys want me, but we can certainly get it scheduled. And really want to support what you guys are doing. Two colleagues and professionals that I definitely respect and pay attention to. And so as you move forward with Principles Program Design, I look forward to supporting that endeavor, and because I know there's just going to be a lot of great information that comes out of it. I run the FMS mentorships, and I recently had Mike on, and just the ability to provide really practical take-home information is just something that Eric and Mike excel at. So looking forward to things as everything moves forward. And I was promised barbecue. I'm not donating my time. You are paying for it in the form of barbecue.
I am paying you in the form of dead animals.
Yeah,
I'm in.
We will work for free meat. So before we do our quick little plugs, the other thing, Mike, if you could post something today, because I know the event is sold out. If you could post something today about just where people could donate if they can't make it up there. I unfortunately have a conflict and I can't make it up there. So where people could donate, not only are these two guys, incredibly handsome, but they from a standpoint of like what strong is, yeah, I can swing a kettlebell or lift a barbell, but like these are two guys that have survived the C word, right? These are two guys that really, have epitomized what real strength is in life. And so I couldn't think of better guys to really bring this mission forward to our community of what strength is. And so if you can donate a couple bucks to this charity just to kind of help people who've been through their situation, they've come out the other side, thank God, and love to have them, with us to push this forward. But yeah, please, if you could get some up there, Mike, where people can donate, that would be very cool for everybody who's on here. Just throw a couple bucks in the can, and let's kind of help with that. Principles Program Design. We have the online courses, final edits, hopefully done this week. Website, Mike, I didn't even get to talk to you. Our guy sent me back our first approval. We hopefully will have that thing live by next week. And that means you could register for our first live course, which is going to be part of a combination course, level 1 FMS on Saturday, Principles of Program Design on Sunday, just outside of Philadelphia and Cherry Hill. You can register for that as well as get the online course, and you'll be able to do that in the next week or so. So all good stuff.
And lastly, there may be a podcast coming out. I'm just throwing it out there. There could be a podcast with Brett and I that could be appearing. I'm just saying within the next couple weeks, and there could be already 12 to 15 episodes pre-recorded. I don't know. I heard from some friends that could be happening, maybe covering the minimum effective dose, like whatever. It's just minimalistic stuff, but whatever. That's just I just heard about it, so I'm not really sure.
Hair care tips.
Hair tips.
All things hair and beauty related.
That's all it's going to be. There's nothing about kettlebells or barbecue, or it's a beauty. We're going to actually change all of our social media outlets to just making the world more beautiful physically. Of course, it has nothing to do with But yeah. So, anyways, D just joined. Sorry, we haven't seen D in a while.
I know D just joined. Oh my gosh,
we got to get D on. D, we miss you.
All right, D. We're hitting you up next.
All right, cool. All right, guys.
Love you. Enjoy your weekend. And everybody, thanks for joining on, and we'll see you next week.
All right, see you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.